Hey, hello, howdy, how you doing? I'm going to keep the intro short so we can just get right into the game. Since you already clicked on the video, I'm not going to try to sell you on what you already bought. In this playthrough, you're going to experience the story through my eyes as I played through it for the first time. The script was written live as I played through the game, both on stream and while recording. Because of this, you're going to hear a variety of changing theories as I slowly piece the story together. For those that are only here for the story, I complete the final cutscene on day 30, but gather all of the pieces for the full explanation on days 49 and 50. The theory I throw out at day 30 is so widely incorrect that it's almost silly to look back on, so if you want all of the little Easter eggs tied together, that's on days 49 and 50. The rest of the time is spent simply experiencing everything the game has to offer in this 100-day survival video. It goes without saying that this video contains massive spoilers, including an entire story explanation as well as where to find every item in the game, so here's your one chance. Alright, let's get into it. After kamikazing the water, I woke up on shore to find Kelvin practicing his interpretive dance routine. It took a few minutes to snap back to reality, but I guess that's what happens when you lose yourself. Exploring the shoreline, I found a cave right next to us and made the conscious decision to make a small base on top of the cave. That way, if we're ever raided at any point, I can use Kelvin as bait and just dive into the cave for protection. The main focus of today was purely survival. Setting up basic shelter, placing an animal trap, and getting to work clearing the area so I could see if any enemies were advancing. On day 2, I set out to hunt. Equipped with a crafted spear, I resorted to small game, which means smaller targets, but they're no match for a spear 5 times their size. After stocking up on some meat, I headed into the cave below to check it out. They use the same bat audio as the forest, so a word of caution for those that are prone to jump scares. Further in, I came across my first mutants. In a sheer act of pure skill and totally not luck at all, I was able to headshot what I thought was a cannibal, but turned out to be a mutant in the first throw. Keep in mind, I was streaming these first 8 days on release day, so there's no official names for these things yet. Because of this, we're going to call the giant mouth tentacle things mouth breathers, and the ghostly blind mutants. I know, super original. These guys are glass cannons. They hit hard, but can be killed with just a few swings. We'll come back here when I have more armor though, because there's a ton of them in every cave, and I'm not equipped at all to fight them. Rope is essential in this game, and the best way to find it early on is to raid cannibal camps, which are sprawled out all over the island. I happened to find one of these camps to check out, and found that they were actively tying up mutants to poles around the perimeter of their bases. Now heading back to my base that evening, I was able to try out the stealth mechanics, successfully getting the jump on a lone cannibal out for an evening stroll before sunset. Day 3 brought more excitement. After spear hunting a deer while Kelvin sat in the bushes and pointed, I stumbled upon a much larger camp than the day before. In this camp, not only did they have more mutants tied up, but there were just more cannibals in general. It seems like what was considered endgame numbers in the forest are starting numbers in Sons. On top of the massive tribe, there's a definitive leader, wielding a giant club and wearing a golden mask. After slaying the brute, I tried my hand at freeing the mutants, which causes an old Far Cry mechanic similar to Animals, where the mutants will then attack the camp inhabitants. So if you want to play stealthily, you could go around to all the mutants and free them, watch them slaughter the cannibals, and then loot the place amidst the chaos. The only problem is, when there's no cannibals left to hunt, well, they'll come after you instead. On the morning of day 4, I saw a female mutant out for a morning jog. We'll come to know her as Virginia, and if you paid attention during the opening cutscene, you'll notice she bears a striking resemblance to someone on the laptop. More on that later though. I decided to head back into the cave now that I have some armor in order to test respawn mechanics. See, in the forest, mutants don't respawn in the caves. Once they're killed, that's it. In Sons of the Forest, however, they'll respawn every time you leave and relaunch that instance, i.e. going out and back into the cave. This means that if you're skilled in combat, you can effectively farm some of the mutants for their armor, which we learned intimidates regular cannibals. Back at camp, we were raided in what I assume was a retaliation attack, and at one point, Kelvin just mad sprinted at a cannibal, and I thought he was going to absolutely annihilate him, only to watch him run right past him and hide in the bushes. Leaving me to get the brakes beat off of me by a bone sickle wielding lunatic. After escaping certain death, I went back and scooped up Kelvin to do some more adventuring when we stumbled across the same camp from day 2, only this time, instead of it being almost completely abandoned, there was a boat motor wielding brute. He didn't really do any damage to me, but he definitely hit a bird and gave poor Kelvin a heavy dose of CTE. I continued traversing the landscape through the morning of day 5, where I found some moose to hunt. This inevitably led me to another cannibal camp where I was forced to teach them the effects of modern technology. Only after this camp was able to finally begin hunting the moose effectively, as in I landed a single shot on one. The problem is, it's a moose, and it tanks damage. I might as well be launching spitballs at these things. I thought all hope was lost until I was able to get the jump on one and take it out. And there's currently no different types of hides in the game. They all just fall under one class of animal hide, which can be used for armor, but a moose does give you 5 meat compared to 3 from a deer. Around nightfall, I set up a small campsite with a tarp and just admired the view because this game is gorgeous. There's these purple icons on your GPS that serve as waypoints for you to travel to. So, on day 6, my objective was to find one and see what they were. The answer? Oh, they're the dead bodies of your fellow comrades. The first one was just dangling off a cliff. You're able to cut him down and retrieve his GPS tracker. These actually respawn every time you load your save, so you can effectively farm these indefinitely, which can be used to mark waypoints similar to the cloth stick markers from the forest. The only issue is that they're currently bugged and only have one style of marker, even though you can choose from a variety of them. Nearby, I found a survivor campsite with some kick music playing that will definitely get me copyright claimed, so here's the Wii theme song instead. This camp has the modern axe, which can be difficult to locate since this isn't a listed POI and is instead just an unmarked location you can stumble across. Note to self, do not hit the propane tanks. Now that we have the modern axe, I wanted to test it out. This was my favorite weapon in the forest, even preferred over the katana, and I gotta say, it does not disappoint in this game. The hits feel incredibly satisfying and like you're actually doing some real damage. I mean, come on. You can cut off limbs in one swing and even decapitate cannibals and mutants if you're able to land critical hits on their heads, effectively making this a one-shot weapon. At this point, I headed back to a green dot on the map, indicating a storyline waypoint. Inside the cave is a hatch that we can enter, where we find a ton of dead bodies and crossbow bolts. There's some food here, but the real eye-catcher is the vaulted door that requires a keycard to access. So we'll bookmark this location and come back later. With what time I had left in the day, I headed to another purple icon, only to find a grave marker. We'll need the shovel to dig this one up, but future me can confirm that this is 100% worth the grave desecration. Not gonna spoil it yet though, you're just gonna have to trust me. It was around the morning of day 7 that chat had informed me of a raft out in the water, so I headed out to see what it held. Inside the raft, we find another survivor, along with a pistol that I'm sure we'll get a ton of use out of. Oh, there's also a shark just swimming around us. I found another survivor on shore that had a pistol rail that I was able to attach right away, meaning there's definitely some attachments for us to find as well. Heading into more of the center of the island, I found a nice spot to set up another base. It's next to a boarded up cave, but there's a small waterfall nearby and we can spearfish and drink from, essentially taking care of any food necessities from here on out. I got to test the pistol out as well, which was really satisfying. Outside of that, I really just spent the rest of the day figuring out everything we could create base-wise. There's no custom foundations or anything like that from the forest, but there are some cool structures we can make. What I mean by this is there's no placeable custom foundations, but you can still create custom builds, just they have to be placed one item at a time instead of placing a blueprint and filling it like you can with pre-builds. My focus right now is setting up a storage area and clearing the lands that we could begin making preparations. Today was a building day. I placed 4 blueprints, a watchtower, a log cabin, a tree platform, and a tree house. One of my favorite things about this is that you can just assign Kelvin to go finish structures for you, so I could go exploring while he hangs out here doing all of the dirty work. In early afternoon, the cannibals showed up. There's a man covered in red that just bulldozed my log cabin that Kelvin just spent all day working on, so I had to put him down. Later in the afternoon, I found a stun baton on an effigy, which I'm not sure how I missed after running past it for a full day, but we have it now, and that's all that matters. Time to channel my inner Paul Blart, baby. The next morning, I entered the cave next to me, leading me to a giant open cavern with blind mutants. I found an email showing how they're looking for gold apparently, and after harvesting creepy armor from the mutants, I found a cross. This is vital to the story later, so just keep that in the back of your head for now. Moving deeper into the cave, I found a slug-like deformed mutant stuck in the rocks that I was able to blow up using a timed bomb that I found nearby. Past that abomination, I found more mutants to fight, both the mouth breathers and then these conjoined mutants that I would rather fight any day of the week. Reaching the end of the cave, I found a zipline gun, and if it's anything similar to the ziplines from the previous game, this is gonna be epic. On the morning of day 10, I headed to a nearby cave to continue my exploration. And there were no mutants for once, but there was a lab with a 3D printer. With the printer, you can make flasks, masks, grapple hooks for the zipline gun, mesh for tech armor, and a sled. I crafted some items and headed deeper in, where I found another vaulted door that I'll need a keycard to access. Outside of that, I spent the rest of the day back at the camp helping Kelvin build out some more of our sanctuary. I woke up on day 11 to find that it had snowed outside. And I'm really loving the changing seasons, though it's something I wished was in the forest, and I'm really happy they brought it into Suns. The river is frozen, but the logs still make a splashing sound, which I thought was pretty funny. The game feels fantastic for early access, and I can't wait to see what the game looks like when it's all finished and fully polished. After spending a few moments working on the base, I turned around to see Kelvin getting absolutely pumped by a bunch of red dudes. These guys are beefy. They're the embodiment of dad bods with the strength of like the Mountain from Game of Thrones. The rest of the day was spent wrapping up the buildings. I'll need to figure out something for defenses, but for now, this is home. It took me forever to figure this out, but after giving Virginia a GPS tracker, she'll beckon for you to follow her, so I did. Except that she didn't lead me to some mystical place, just a nearby waterfall where she sat down and just waited for something amazing to happen. Hi, post-recording Preds here. She actually is leading you to hidden items nearby, which in this case, she's leading me to the location of the stun baton, even though I already have it. I figured this was as good a day as any to head back into my initial base and explore that cave underneath. On my way towards the base, I found a landed helicopter with some weapon crates. All the pilots in it are skeletons, so they're way before our time. Now exploring the cave, I think I'm starting to get used to fighting these mutants, at least the ones that we've seen so far. The blind ones are super weak and you can effectively 1 or 2 shot most of them. From there, you just need to dodge the mouth breathers and get behind them, hit their legs so they fall, and then you can deal the most damage. At the end of the cave, I found a stun gun hanging on a body, along with a peek into a slug thing from Monsters Inc. just roaming around. Heading back through the cave, I took the other section and found the rebreather, which I was ecstatic to find. I really like the new design for it, as it's much easier to see underwater while wearing it versus the original one from the forest. And this path just takes you back to the ocean near the cave. After getting back to shore, I spent the rest of the night at my OG base. Now that I have the rebreather and I'm right next to it, this seemed like the perfect time to check out the heli wreckage under the water. Finding it with the rebreather was easy, but unfortunately there's nothing to grab from the wreckage, at least at the time of recording. It's very possible they have something for the future that they'll add, but as it stands, it's just a cool place to stare at. At this point, I had accumulated some skin pouches, which are just this game's version of free loot boxes, I guess, so I decided to open all of them, which gave me this pretty wacky bug. First, I kept opening them progressively faster. Second, I held every item that was on the table, so at one point I was holding like 20 items in one hand. While searching the peninsula, I came across another grave, or maybe it's the same one as before, I don't know. All I do know is that I need the shovel. The only other interesting moment on day 13 was the fact that Virginia gave me a squirrel, similar to like when a cat brings you a dead mouse and is all proud of it, but you know, just small game in this case. I spent the morning of day 14 making a ton of bone armor. While traveling to another GPS icon, a cannibal in winter clothing hopped out from behind a tree and tried to intimidate me, so I cut her head off in one swing and saved it to put on an effigy later. This GPS icon was the exact same body that I looted one off of earlier, but I'll take it. While exploring some more, I found a slingshot on a group of 3 bodies positioned facing a boarded up cave, so naturally I had to go explore that as well. Right away, there's a zipline that takes you to a giant body of water, so I threw on the rebreather and dove in. There's a sinkhole towards the center that brings you into a single pathway with a ton of blind mutants. Moving forward, I accidentally slid into a giant cavern. Now moving through another pathway, I found another dead soldier in the corner with a ton of cash around him. After looting him, I threw on the rebreather and swam back into another tight area, resurfacing in front of another set of blind mutants. Unfortunately, after a few minutes of pretty intense combat, I got way too confident and ended up being kidnapped by a conjoined mutant, waking up in this jelly cocoon. Funny enough, I was right next to the entrance, so I decided to just set up camp outside for the night and head back in the next morning. Until all of the mutants ambushed me while I was placing a tarp. Seriously though, like 3 conjoined mutants and one of those mouth breathers came charging at me and almost killed me, before I dipped out and ran all the way back to base. We'll have to go back in and explore some more, but we'll need more armor before we do so. My big goal for today was to wrap up all of the blueprints so that I could get rid of all the notes on that left-hand side of my screen. Around mid-morning, a group of ferals attacked my camp, and they were all wearing armor of some sort. One had just some leaf armor on, but others were wearing like full-on mutant armor. I still have some sticks to place, but I have no idea where the blueprints are, so I headed back to my original base to see if they were there for some reason. The next step was to just roam the peninsula and check for any locations I'd set up a base at. I made it to a cliff by nightfall and got jump scared by a cannibal while trying to sleep. On my quest to continue hunting for hidden blueprints, I came across a camp of cannibals that I felt like taking on. Most of them had gone out for a walk at some point, so I was able to take care of the lone guard, but unfortunately they all came rumbling back in and kicked it out of me, forcing me to retreat. As I was heading back to camp, I came across 3 more graves marked with stick crosses. Placed a GPS tracker here and turned around to see Requise standing off in the distance. Luckily, I always carry and was able to drop him with 1 bullet to the skull. So I went back through my old footage and found where the sticks are needed. On day 8, I tried to place a fish trap, but it phased through the pond, meaning I couldn't add to it. I was able to find and remove it, which was a huge relief for me. It was around mid-morning when what can only be described as the fleshy slinky of conjoined mutants pulled up on the base. This thing reminded me so much of the worm from the forest for some reason, and that was genuinely disturbing. It also hit like a fucking truck, and even bullets didn't do much. Luckily, we have C4, so I just started yeeting bombs at it until it finally dropped. Oh, also, the 3D printed arrows one-shot deer, which was really nice. Glad to see the deer physics from the OG game carried over. I woke up on day 18 to find Kelvin was still down and Virginia crying over him, trying to provide comfort. I'm not even able to help him up, which was a little unnerving. Hello, post-recording Preds here once again. This actually killed Kelvin. He's just stuck in a down state, but when I reloaded my save, he was legitimately dead, so F's in the chat. Alright, back into it. After crafting a full set of leaf armor, I headed back down into the 3D printer so I could craft some tech armor. I was able to make 2 pieces before running out of batteries, so we'll have to find more and come back. That being said, I have some tech armor now, and a couple pieces of mutant armor, and a full set of leaf armor, and a backup set of leaf armor, so we should be ready to head back into the caves. I set back out for that cave with the 3 bodies outside of it on the morning of day 19. Eventually, I made it back to that little section where I went through a side hole, so I decided to head back down that way since it was a little off the beaten path. I got dropped again by something I didn't see, so after cutting myself out and healing up, I went back in. Luckily, there was only one final mutant to kill. Now, reaching the end of the cave, I saw a bright white light in the distance. I'm not able to progress past this point, but it looks like a giant underground facility, almost like a prison. I have the shovel now, but there's still a whole other section of the cave to explore, so let's get to work. Heading back through the water, there's another entrance instead of going back to my main path with all the cash, so I took this route instead. At first glance, there are a ton of mutants in here, and I wasn't taking any chances. Aside from the mutants, there's not much in this section aside from some ammo and a flashlight attachment. Heading back through the cave, I got jump scared by a giant mutant slime ball bursting through the wall. Similar to the first encounter, we're able to use a time bomb on it to open another passage to explore. Now the end of this passage brings you down to a drop area, so I took a deep breath and aimed for the bushes. This leads you out of the cave through a small crevice that takes you out into a river just downstream from the original entrance. Waking up the next morning, I found a mouth breather right outside my treehouse, so I did my best NYPD impression and tried to de-escalate the situation with the taser. Unfortunately, it wouldn't stop resisting, so I had to break out the old stun baton and beat it into submission. Anyway, now that I have the shovel, I set off for some good old-fashioned grave desecration. My first target was that GPS icon of that soul grave I found a while back. I made it there around noon and began digging, uncovering one of my favorite moments of this entire playthrough. Luckily, a cannibal patrol was passing through, so I got to test this bad boy out right away. On my way back, I ended up fighting like 10 cannibals, so here's a little taste of what that looked like. On day 21, I set out for that grave site with the 3 markers to see what I could dig up. Oh, there's not anything crazy like shotguns or anything like that, but I did get some rope and cloth, which will be useful. Now that the sites are taken care of, I wanted to see how I could progress the story. A couple of my admins had told me there were these dig sites with green pulses on the GPS, so I headed to one and see what I could find. Digging in these areas unlocks a hatch entrance to something, but when I tried to open it, the game bugged and I'm not able to enter. I even ran all the way to that cave from the start of day 2 to try to enter a new instance to see if that would reload and fix, but no luck. No, the game was still bugged at this point, so I set up a tarp and relaunched the game, which seemed to fix the issue. The entrance leads to an underground bunker where you can find some music, an email about missing artwork, and a keycard from a maintenance worker who's hanging out in the bathtub. And because this is a very gruesome scene and I don't want this video to get taken down, I'm not going to show you the scene in the bathroom, but check it out for yourself in-game if you're interested. It's a pretty dark display. Further down, you can find a firefighter axe which does more damage than the modern axe, but swings a little bit slower. To be honest, I didn't notice much of a difference in swing speed, so I'll probably just be using this going forward. On the morning of day 22, while making my way to another green marker, I stumbled across more graves to defile. A cannibal was harassing me, so I dug his grave, put a bullet in his head, and threw him in. Looks like I found my way to a golf course. Legend has it we're actually on Epstein's Island. Wonder how we got on those flight logs. Later on, I rudely interrupted some cannibals trying to golf with a boat motor, which I thought was just silly. On the golf course is another dig site. The cover of the vault has an entry level into Maintenance C. Inside the bunker, I found a revolver which takes 9mm ammo. I got to test out this bad boy almost immediately after leaving the bunker. The next morning, I set out for another green marker. I didn't take too much time to explore the golf course outside of the bunker, but I'm sure we'll come back in a few weeks and do some more in-depth exploration. On my way to the next marker, I found an abandoned cannibal camp. The next waypoint is a sealed bunker that we need a keycard to access. I tried the maintenance one we obtained, but had no success. Along the shore, I found a dock with some golf carts and crates. And further along, I found a nice little cannibal camp that I set out to colonize by bringing a gun to a bone fight. This must have been what Christopher Columbus felt like. So, there's one more green marker not too far from our current position. After making 9 pieces of bone armor, I set out to see what I could find. As I walked along the shoreline, I came across 2 camps within feet of each other, essentially creating this large camp of like 20 cannibals. Luckily for me, I have things like shotguns. And handguns. I was able to teabag to assert dominance, which was very effective. And outside of that, I tested out some Molotovs to see how the brutes would react. Looking back on this, these camps were littered with brutes. Instead of 1 or 2, there ended up being like 6, which hasn't been the normal experience for me so far. This fight actually lasted way longer than I was anticipating. It felt like every time I'd cleared the area, another round of reinforcements would come swooping in. By early evening, I had set up a small resting spot for the night, but decided to head back in one final time before heading to sleep, just to leave a reminder of what happens when you get in my way. I continued my journey to the next checkpoint on day 24. This game is so beautiful, man. The marker is a cave entrance which leads to a facility. Now, moving into the facility, I headed downstairs and was able to use my maintenance key on the door, leading to the following cutscene. I have no idea what just happened, other than the dude that pistol whipped us in the beginning came in and shot the old dude, and then Tammy from Thousand Pound Sisters came rolling on in and got stuck in the door. Getting to my feet, I pushed further in. The main problem right now is all the mutants in the area. There's tons of blind ones wandering around, and then the mouth breathers that like to ruin my day. Exploring some of the rooms, I found a putter stuck in someone's head that we can use as a weapon, as well as a code translator for symbols and numbers that I'm sure we'll need later. I took some time to make more tech armor, as well as use all the resin to make more mesh for the armor. Another room had a second pistol and another rail that I used to attach a laser sight with. Moving down to the second floor, I found a katana in one of the rooms. The next room over, I found a golden armor, which I'm assuming makes you look like a brute. Heading to the bottom floor, I encountered what is quite possibly the most terrifying Slenderman looking mutant in the game. When it comes to these demon spawns, just load up the buckshot and fire away. Friendly reminder that these dead bodies are brought to you by Crunchy Wunchies. Stop by the nearest Whole Foods to get yours today. There's a book in here named The Deep Sleep that I picked up before using my key card on another door to access a tunnel leading out of the facility. As much as I'd love to go test out what this gold armor can do, I had this compulsive need to go explore the nearby cave. But there's not really anything to do in it. It's just a big open cavern with a skeleton here, but there's not really anything else in here to do. I tried blowing up a wall, but it didn't seem to do anything. Luckily for me, there was another cave nearby. It just happened to be up the mountains. There's some tents outside of the cave that you can save at before heading in. Pretty sure this is the way to the ice castle from Frozen, so I'm expecting Olaf to give me the tour. Guys, don't judge, I'm a girl dad now, I have to make these jokes. Well, this wasn't the castle from Frozen. It actually turned out to be the tomb of 3 poor souls who spent their final moments clutching bottles of vodka. I found another set of tents up ahead along with a body that I spent the night with. On the morning of day 26, I went full X Games mode and went sledding down the mountain. The big takeaway from sledding down the hills is to always remember to pizza before you french fry. If you french fry when you're supposed to pizza, you're gonna have a bad time. I made it back to my camp late that morning, and after grabbing some more meat, set off to the 3D printer cave that I needed a key card for to see if I could use the maintenance key for that. So it looks like you are able to use the maintenance key card here, and it opens up to a giant fitness center room. This whole area is absolutely massive. It's a giant bathroom where all the civilians look to be slaughtered with some mutants walking around. The pool room has a ton of bodies plastered to the wall with all this ooze, but nothing else in there right now. Moving into the lounge, I watched a conjoined mutant just spider walk its way across the window, which gave me the chills, and I'm gonna make you well witness it too. Walking up the steps takes us to Margaritaville. Only instead of Jimmy Buffett, you get mouth breathers and dead bodies in the swim-up bars. Heading past a keycard door, I found the bar where a person sat in the center of the dance floor with a guitar shoved down their throat. On one of the tables, I found a guest keycard. Heading back to the previous door, I opened it to see several blind mutants walking around with some dead bodies nearby. Moving down into one of the lower levels, I found a little movie theater section with a man lounging in a beanbag chair with a chainsaw stuck in his chest. There's a side room you can go through here that leads you into a cave and back out into the forest. Now that we know the maintenance keycard works on other vault doors, I headed back to the original cave that we found and entered the hatch there. Using the maintenance keycard on that vault door opens up into some sort of green room. Inside, there's a body covered with crossbow bolts. The bottom floor is completely flooded. Swimming through some of the hallways, I came up on a security room with this plane on the cameras. On the desk is a VIP keycard for the daughter, along with an email of Artifact 2. Further down, I was able to use the VIP keycard, opening up to the food court where we just watched everyone mutate. When I walked in, I didn't notice until the very end where I saw someone just fall into the water. I jumped in to investigate, but turned back to check out the area some more. There's a ton of mutants here that are all just dead and just set at the tables. The water leads to another cave tunnel with some mutants in it. Following the pathway leads to an unmarked cave exit back into the forest. I set out for the bunker near the golf course on the morning of day 28. I probably walked for around 2 minutes or so before finding another helicopter completely covered in brush and overgrowth. The big takeaway from this POI is the pistol silencer, which at this point seems like the better of the two options compared to the revolver. My goal for making it to the bunker was just to cut through the mountains, an idea that sounded good in my head, but was probably way more trouble than it was worth. There were several times where I climbed almost to the top, only to find out it was either a false summit or there was no way to pass through, forcing me around to another side to try. The most effective method I found so far is just Skyrim jumping my way up the mountain until finally reaching the summit. Of course, once you make it to the top, the next step is getting back down. I made it to the bunker by late afternoon and decided to set up camp right outside for the night, before heading in the next morning. Looks like the VIP card is needed for the vault. Looks like this is another entrance into a separate facility. Setting foot inside, I found a bunny plushie and a cute little sweater which creeped me out for some reason. I think just having it sit in an empty room with a light on it set a very ominous tone without having to have a mutant gut my whole day. There's a green room here, but nothing in it. It actually appears to be Virginia's room. Across the hall is an entrance to an art gallery. There's a fantastic callback here to The Forest in a book named Rescued, which is written by Eric LeBlanc, who you play as in The Forest. I absolutely love the reference. Deeper in, I found a nice little room where I could save and sleep in. In the bathroom, the sink is blown out. Behind it, there's an ancient door and a passageway that you can use the gold armor to open. Following the passageway, I discovered some lava. In the lava, there's some of these more Slenderman crawler mutants that I was able to take out with the shotgun and katana. They don't seem to be impacted by the lava at all. Something tells me we're getting close to the end game here. There's a ton of mutants in here that took some time to work through, but eventually I was able to make my way down through another passageway. I found some more writing referencing staying inside the cube and how the cross we picked up a few weeks ago destroys demons. So what I'm thinking happens here is the cube prevents you from becoming a mutant when it activates. Testing out the cross theory, I was able to successfully light a mutant on fire after screaming the power of Christ compels you. I went ahead and threw on some tech armor just for safe measure. I'm not sure how good it is compared to the other pieces, but it's worth taking a chance on. I continued through to another massive open cavern with lava flowing through it. Inside were more demons, so I relied on the cross to do most of the heavy lifting. Doesn't necessarily do all that much damage, but it's very reliable. Reaching the end of the cavern, I found a passageway covered in gold. This next section, I'm just going to let play out with no voiceover because I just can't do it justice. Well, that was a lot to unpack. At the end, we're given the choice to either leave the island or stay and continue the fight. Given that this is a 100-day video and we're only on day 30, I think we all know which option I chose. Similar to what we did in the forest video, for those who are only here for the story, you can head out now knowing that I didn't just drag you along for however long this video ends up being. From this point on, we'll do some more exploring and focus on building some more to see just how much we can still accomplish. A few things I want to touch on are that we still have no idea who the person was that pistol whipped us, why they were trying to kill the dude we rescued, or any of this. These are all answers I'm hoping to find through some more exploration, but we'll have to see what other secrets we can dig up. Worth noting right now, I do have a breakthrough on days 49 and 50 that fully explain all of this, so if you're sitting here shaking in your seat because something here is incorrect, please just skip to day 49 and 50 before you send me death threats. Alright, moving on. Now that for the most part the main story is completed, the first thing I wanted to do was test if you could re-enter the Golden Cube after beating the game, or even access that cave anymore. The short answer is yes, you can access everything up to the final Golden Cube, which was kind of a bummer. I was really hoping to head back in one last time and check everything out, but it turns out you're just not able to. Time to spend the rest of the day running back up to the surface, I guess. The only thing worth noting on day 32 was I found some long abandoned wooden houses that almost seemed like fishing huts. There was nothing grabbable inside them with only a few decorative props like old fridges, so I just continued my journey back to camp. Since I haven't done much with it yet, I wanted to spend some time learning the base building mechanics. It's much different than the forest, as you can't just place custom blueprints on whatever you want. Most pieces have to be laid out individually and built out by yourself. This wouldn't be too bad if we had Kelvin, since he could just farm materials for us, but without him, we'll just have to do everything ourselves. First things first, it's time to find a legitimate base location. I like being near this stream, but let's face it, this is a horrible spot to deal with cannibal and mutant raids. I have a few potential spots in mind, so on day 33, I set out to find my next home. I made it to the golf course by early afternoon and chose to spend the day here resting up. The hardest part of finding the bluff I want to set up at is the fact that it's covered in snow, making it near impossible to find anything. I spent most of day 34 searching as well. It's hilarious to think how much effort went into just finding a waterfall. I sat in a voice chat with like 4 people for over an hour trying to remember where one specific bluff was in this massive island. A painstaking process that led to me climbing mountains, running into random patrols on the mountain's sides, introducing them to the modern weapons I have, then sledding down said mountains until eventually I discovered a golf cart to rest beside. At this point, I decided to just head on down to the shoreline and begin walking around the perimeter until I found a spot I was thinking of. I'll be documenting any cool moments that come up as well, such as stumbling on a cannibal camp with a tied up mutant that'll unleash onto the camp. By early afternoon, I came up on the islands in one of the map corners. Well, technically one isn't an island, it's just an extension, but it's far enough out of the way that I figured I might as well swing by and see if I can find anything. Around sunset on day 35, I think I found the waterfall, or at least a waterfall. I set up camp right next to it and would continue my journey tomorrow morning. Words cannot describe how excited I am that it's spring now. As someone who lives in the Midwest and deals with snow constantly, I think I've seen enough of it to never want to experience it in video games. This waterfall wasn't what I thought it was, so day 36 was more trudging along. That was until I came up on another dig site and started exploring. The site itself is right next to a cannibal camp, so I had to clear them out first before I could start digging. I had a movie moment when I dropped 2 cannibals with my final 2 bullets, leaving me with just a shotgun and a katana. With the camp cleared out, I now began digging, for about 30 seconds before a group of Rayquazas showed up, forcing me to take them out on. Opening the hatch to Maintenance B leads us into a flooded hallway with flickering lights. In the bathroom, I found a compound bow next to a flat Stanley, who's clearly fallen on hard times. Leaving Maintenance B, I found what's either an airstrip or a straightaway on a golf course. The only reason I say airstrip is because of the downed plane resting on it. There's also golf carts sitting here, so I could go either way. On the plane is a pamphlet for what they wanted the facility to be before everyone turned into mutants. Looking back, I'm not sure I ever hit up any of these caves near me, so I set out to explore them. The first cave I entered seems unfinished. There's a skeleton lounging in a nice armchair with crates nearby. The way he's positioned, it's almost like he should have an item or a weapon in his hands that you can take, so we'll have to revisit in another playthrough. The next cave required some backtracking. While on my way there, I found some tents with a man sitting inside who'd frozen to death. Those tripods were here, so I figured I'd take a shot at digging around to see what I could find. Doesn't seem like there's anything here though. Heading into the cave, it seems to be a similar ice cave with another dead body. The layout is exactly the same as one of the previous mountain caves I came across, so I think it's safe to assume this is another currently work-in-progress cave. The third cave also feels incomplete. It's another open, one-room cave with some junk laying around. Pretty underwhelming, all things considered. After finding a mini waterfall, I came across a camp with some golf balls and finally found a can opener. On day 38, I walked into the middle of what looked like a child cannibal taking on 4 different mutants. I tried to lend them a hand to respect the 1v1, but had to take matters into my own hands when they tried to flee. Never break rule 1, ladies and gents. After several days of hunting, I just gave up looking for the waterfall view again, and on day 39, found a nice cozy formation in one of the cliffs that I chose to be my new base. It's small enough for one person, but has enough space that we can build some wacky things, like parkour steps with wall planters. Next was the walls. This was really easy since I could just place them next to each other. The big issue came with trying to figure out how to place a simple fucking door. So you have to place like 6 logs down, then cut out the middle. Sounds easy, right? Well, you go and try it and tell me just how easy it is. I finished up the door the next morning. So here's what the gate to Narnia looks like all finished up and ready for use. Now that we have a door, I can focus on placing the rest of my logs. From there, I turn the logs into spikes for some basic defense. I want to build a little loft section, so I spent the rest of the day chopping trees. Something that's become a staple in almost every video I've created. Oh, also I remembered I had a chainsaw. It would have been nice to remember before I built all this out. At this point, I wanted to start building out some zip lines to make travel more efficient, so I began making my way back to that cave with the 3D printer in it by my old base to craft the grapple hook needed since I already had rope. I figured I could also just grab all the gear at my old base and bring it back here as well since I was in the area anyway. It's also worth noting that I haven't seen Virginia in weeks and her GPS tracker hasn't moved, so she's either stuck somewhere or dead. At first, I thought she was downed and stuck like how Calvin was. She tried to give me a rabbit, so from my perspective, she's just been hunting this singular rabbit for like multiple days at a time. Heading back into the cave, I entered through the keycard room and made my way back to the bar where I found a guitar on the counter. Not sure how I missed that on the first time through. Using the VIP card on the unopened door, we can find Mr. Puffton's will on the table. The sun was already setting when I exited the cave, so I headed back to my old base for the night, dodging some mutants that had started wandering in the area. On the morning of day 42, I grabbed my extra gear and headed back to my new base, testing out the grapple gun. It has about 1/5 of the range that the zipline towers had in the forest, which was kind of a bummer. It's definitely still possible to make a highway system with them, but it's going to be tedious and a lot of work to pull off. Funny enough, the zipline actually almost got me killed when I tried to climb my way up a mountain. I have no idea how I didn't break both legs and shatter every vertebrae in my body. Guess I'm just built different. I made it back to the base around noon and placed all of my collected bones to finish up the chair. Now I just need some skulls and another 15 bones for the chandelier. From there, I proceeded to spend the rest of the day trying my best to build stairs. After like 15 minutes of looking around, I finally figured out how to get this done. In the wise words of the Drake and Josh theme song, it's gonna take some time. We're gonna need hundreds, if not thousands, of logs to pull this off. A large portion of day 43 was spent chopping down trees to gather as many logs as possible for this building project. When I wasn't chopping down trees, I was dealing with the cannibals breaking down my front door. This wasn't the worst thing in the world though, since I could use their bones to finish some of the blueprints around my base. Since the door was a complete bust, I disassembled it and fully walled in my shelter. From there, I used the grapple gun to set 2 ropes so I could come and go as I pleased. I have plans to further reinforce the walls, but this should do for now. Day 44 was a continuation of the loft. I started building out the sides since there wasn't really a way I could keep the tucked in portion of the mountain the way I wanted it to be if I continued building straight. At one point, I noticed my stick inventory was bugged and I had 50 sticks sitting in it, which I used to finish up the wall planters. In the late afternoon, I found a couple of ferals watching me, so I killed them and threw them over the wall, using their bones and skulls to put in some more work on the chandelier. Now that the main portion of the loft is built out, I was trying to figure out exactly what to do with it. I think I'm going to do like a small bedroom up there and keep the decorative stuff for around the walls. At this point though, we've been working on this for a few days and I'm kind of feeling like fighting. Turns out the crossbow was in one of the vaults that I already visited, so I geared up and set out to go find that. Whenever I reach a cliff section, I try to find a good spot to drop zip lines. While traveling, I found another cannibal camp completely overrun by mutants. I'm not sure if the mutants are slowly taking over or if this is just another coincidence, but it's definitely worth noting for now. Heading into the vault, I found the crossbow in the second green room in a corner between 2 shelves. This thing looks deadly. There's a camp not too far away from here, so I went towards that to try this thing out. Sneaking up on the camp, it looks like they're praying to an effigy. When I got closer though, it just sounded like some dude was just getting the sloppiest top of his life. Since we can't be having that tomfoolery on this Christian Minecraft server, I put a bolt in him. This thing packs a punch. It feels so satisfying to use, like Just watch this. After squad wiping the camp, I piled up the bodies and burned them for bones. I spent the morning of day 46 trying to trick shot one of the brutes that was out for a morning stroll. While heading back to my base, I found another patrol out and about. I took one of them out with the crossbow before getting into a pretty gruesome fight while a boombox blasted commercials in the background. All things considered, I'm really enjoying the music from all the boomboxes just out at every campsite we come across. Another thing I'm learning with the grapple gun. The best use of it isn't to set up stations to travel with, but just to use it in everyday movement to traverse the island faster. Fun fact, did you guys know you can send your logs on a zipline? Like, they just go as if there's a motor on the back of them propelling them uphill. I love it. Day 47 was entirely spent building out the walls of the loft. I really wish Kelvin were here. Sure, he was permanently brain damaged and incapable of doing anything other than dumb labor, but just having him chop trees for me or collect sticks would have sped this up exponentially. Once I had a door built, I built out 2 shelves that I spent more time filling. I figured at least one of these would be for utility items and explosives, and I'd have to figure out what I wanted to put in the other. I had a wall shelf downstairs in the den that I stored all my food in, but I'm sure I'll get around to rearranging that one as well. My big focus for today was wrapping up the loft. All that needed to be done was the roof, which I probably could have finished earlier, but I ended up getting raided by a few cannibals and a brute that I used to farm bones from. By that evening, I'd finished most of the roof, but was gonna need one more day to wrap everything up. I finished up the roof the next morning and set off immediately for the food and drink vault. One of my admins had triggered an in-game cutscene similar to what we experienced with a person falling into the water, and I wanted to see if I could recreate it. I also have some shockingly crazy twists to show you. See that? That's the man who pistol whipped us in the beginning, and he's not alone. I think the game is trying to bait you into chasing them here so you don't examine the room, because when you do, you can start to put the pieces together, especially if you revisit after completing the story. Take a look at the names on the cards here. Hank Keys, Gordon Langston. Any of them look familiar? If you pay attention to any of the email notes laying around, they should. But the crazy one is sitting at the throne of the table. The man, the myth, the billionaire himself, Edward Puffton. The Edward Puffton that we are supposedly searching for. Alright, everyone get on your Alex Jones tinfoil hats because here's my thoughts. The cube keeps you safe, but when it triggers, it turns everyone into mutants. We're dealing with different dimensions and potential time loops here. I've been doing some more digging on this, and it seems that the general belief is that the man in the green at the end is Timmy. Players recognize a scar on his face, which he got in the first game, which would make the older gentleman that walks in on the cutscene Eric LeBlanc. The Eric LeBlanc, as in the protagonist from The Forest. If you want to subscribe to this idea, it's further amplified during the original cutscene when he looks at the man in green and says, "Get down, son," and steps in with a shotgun. Normally, that line could be written off as just a throwaway line, but I look at it like this. This is quite literally the only line of dialogue, not just in this game, but in both The Forest and Sons of the Forest. The only sentence uttered by any character. To me, everything in a story is important, and that piece of dialogue is no different. Especially in a cutscene like that where the man didn't have to say anything. The entire scene would have played out exactly the same regardless of if the old man said the words or nothing at all. So because of that, I'm looking at this as a small gem for us to pick up on. It's also worth noting that it seems that the mutations only happen to anything underground at the time the cycle activates. That would explain how the cannibals above ground never mutate, but why they continue to tie up and fight the mutants in the area. As for the random person who gets mutated, I think that may be a group from Sahara, as they lost a lawsuit with Puff Corp over the ownership of the island, and killing Edward seems to be the route they'd go in. At this point, I was intrigued enough with the story to head back to the location with the triggered cutscene and see if there were any notes I missed. We have two options at how to look at this. 1. The game is still buggy in early access, so the cutscenes are just looped and bugged to always trigger no matter what. Or 2. Time loop. Let me know your thoughts on this, because I'm genuinely curious to know what the consensus is, both from people who are experiencing this for the first time on this video, and from anyone who's played the game so far. Outside of that, I went through the facility one more time and ended up finding a gold mask on top of one of the body bags. I also want to add another tidbit here. I think this facility is Sahara's, the corp from the forest, whereas the resort is from Puff Corp. This would be why the bidding war triggered over ownership of the island, since both were functioning on it at the same time. My thought process for this is that Sahara would be more inclined to be doing research on the cannibals here like we see in these rooms, versus Puff Corp, who was clearly more concerned with getting a top tier resort up and running. That would explain why there's so many emails based around golf balls and other resort items, whereas the reports here are redacted and all based on artifacts and other crazy. Alright, my head hurts, I think we need a break from the story. Let's go raid some cannibal camps. I need rope anyway. This is the third camp I've come across that has been completely overrun with mutants, and cannibals seem to be becoming more scarce. It seems the camps are now mostly, if not entirely, overrun by mutants, leaving the cannibals to kind of just roam the island. This seems like a transition to endgame content where the difficulty increases just due to the amount of mutants roaming, and the cannibals just can't keep up. To test this theory out a little bit more, I wanted to revisit that double camp on the shoreline. Going forward, I think my plan is going to be spending most of the winter periods building out the base more. I think allocating base building to 6-day segments will be the most enjoyable way to play, as well as a nice break from action and chaos without getting too boring. That, and trying to navigate the island in general during the winter, is just a massive so. My first addition to the base was to add a watchtower. It requires a ton of logs, which takes some time now that we don't have Kelvin to do it for us. By mid-afternoon, I realized I still need some rope, so we'll have to go hit up a camp tomorrow. Going back to what I was talking about on day 51, I figured tomorrow would be a good day to head out to the double camp and just see what we could loot. Looks like the mutants haven't charged the beach camps yet, but the cannibals have been capturing them. I spent most of the day fighting, so here's what that looked like. Day 54 was back to work on the base. I spent most of the day just placing stakes outside of the walls to deter any Rayquazas from breaking through the wall. On day 55, I focused on storage. I placed 2 larger shelves inside the den, and then threw a bunch of stick and rock blueprints out so I could focus on accumulating resources in my spare time. I also chopped down some more logs to work on progress in the future. I woke up on day 56 to springtime, which means mud and rain, but it also means complete chaos and destruction. One thing I wanted to test out was if I'm able to actually build inside a bunker or an instance. Looks like you can still build things inside. One thing with this though, when you build a fire pit in the bunker and light it, it triggers sprinklers to try and put it out, which I thought was a nice little touch to add. Leaving the bunker, I wanted to spend some time bow hunting and just immersing myself in the island. But I ended up wandering onto another cannibal camp completely overrun with mutants. I know I've said it before, but I'm really enjoying the dynamic of the mutants slowly taking over the island and pushing the cannibals out. At this point, we've kind of experienced everything Sons of the Forest intended us to, so I just wanted to see what I can accomplish in the next 43 days. My first goal was to see if I could completely wipe a camp without being noticed, so on day 57, I set out to find the perfect camp. On my epic quest, I found a mountain that effectively allows you to phase under the map. I didn't want to risk diving through it, but I wanted to document it here for any of you daredevils that want to check it out for yourselves. By far my favorite thing in this game is the fact that sleds currently don't inflict fall damage when you're on them, so you can just do crazy like this. %0 chance this stays in the game past the first update, so I'm just trying to enjoy it as much as possible before it's removed. One last thing with the sled. You can whip it out down these larger rivers like you're rafting, and it's so much fun. Not having much luck finding a camp so far. The only one I've managed to come up on that wasn't infested with mutants was completely abandoned. I think what I'm going to do is head back to one of the vaults that hit up that large initial camp I found on like day 3. Fortunately, that means I'm going to have to trek all the way back across the island. I made it to the larger camp around mid-morning, but found it mostly abandoned. They had one cannibal hanging around, but I caught sight of a couple running off in the distance, so I decided to set up camp and rest until dusk to see if they came back. I raided the camp around midnight on day 59, trying my best to pick off any cannibals I could with a crossbow and modern bow. This inevitably just turned into a night raid with all hints of stealth going out the window like a minute into the fight, bringing in a ton of chaos and fire. As I was wandering the island after sunrise, I found this massive open area near a pond. I put a tracker down because we'll be coming back here in a few days. The biggest bug I'd like to see fixed is literally just the GPS trackers. No matter what I put down, they just revert to the green radio. Outside of that, I hit up a 3D printer to make more tech armor. While heading back to base, I noticed a small cannibal and 2 Rayquazas running away from a conjoined mutant. Looks like even the patrols are starting to be weeded out. Nothing really happened outside of these events. The rest of the day was really just spent running back to my base. Even with the zip lines, it's still taking me over half a day to travel like anywhere. On day 60, I found another camp infested with mutants and tried to go in quiet again, which went about as well as you'd expect it to go. I found another spot for potential build site, and I think I'm going to go with this one since there's less cannibals milling around, which should make it a little more peaceful for me, aside from the occasional mutants. The rest of the day was almost entirely spent hunting moose, or if you're Brian Regan, hunting a flock of moosin. The crossbow is great for this because it literally one-shots these behemoths. Near the build site, I found a nice little tent on a small hill, so I won't need to build a camp. I can just use what's already available to me. At this point, the days are going to start to fly by for a few weeks. See, I'm going to embark on a massive building project. We're going to go ahead and attempt to build our own town in this open field here, equipped with guard towers, cabins, defenses, pathways, and various decorations. The big issue with this is that we don't have Handy Manny to help us since he died like 2 months ago, so all of the collecting and grinding will need to be done by myself. First things first, I laid out the rough blueprints of where I wanted everything to go, starting with the pathways. From there, I split up the field into different sections. We have living quarters, storage, and then a barracks for equipment as well as some other buildings. We'll need to do the perimeter as well, but that will come in time. For this project, we're going to need well over 1,000 logs to complete this, and that's not even including the custom buildings I'm planning on making. Oh, and on top of all of that, we're going to have to deal with all these cannibal raids. I figured it'd be easiest to start with the stone paths so that I could have a good base to work with. The only thing to consider with this is that I can only hold 10 rocks at a time, and each set requires 4 rocks, so I can do 2.5 chunks per inventory. Because of how tedious this is, I ended up spending days 62 and 63 solely farming rocks for these paths. The next few days were entirely spent chopping down trees. Like I said, we need over 1,000 logs just for what I have blueprinted right now, not including any of the walls or custom buildings. One thing I noticed with this is that there's a max amount of logs on the ground. When you chop down trees past that max, the game will begin despawning any logs that are on the ground to replace them, forcing me to have to build in between chopping. So instead of chopping all these trees down, I have to chop down like 10 trees, collect the logs, and then go build, then repeat indefinitely. By day 67, I'd gotten so tired of cutting down trees with the chainsaw that I just resorted to explosives. Unfortunately, these controlled explosions were not without casualties. I wanted to give everyone a little update on day 69. At this point, I've run out of trees in the near vicinity. Even if it doesn't quite look like it, I have to run for almost 30 seconds to even grab logs to run all the way back to camp to place 2 at a time, so I decided to head up to the mountain and cut them down from up there. During the afternoon, while I was slapping logs together, I found a moose just vibing on one of the rooftops. Finally, around sunset on day 79, I wrapped up the general premise of the village. I'll still need to wall in the perimeter and add some storage rooms, but the cabins are ready to be moved into. At this point, I think I've earned a mini vacation, so I decided to do one last full loop around the island to check out the POIs one more time. Starting at the crash site, I wanted one last look at the sunken heli, just to make sure I wasn't missing anything from here. Looks like there's potential to add some type of item or Easter egg, but right now it's just another piece of metal at the bottom of the sea. Next up was my first base, which was conveniently right off the shoreline. I have so many great memories here, like Kelvin destroying the entire place when I told him to clear the area, Kelvin getting sliced in half by a bone sickle, Kelvin looking like he was about to suplex a cannibal only to run past him and hide in the bushes. Good times. Next on the list was a food and drink bunker, where we find the billionaire and all of his friends when they turned. A crucial change in the story happens here, and it's my favorite bunker to explore in the game so far. Exiting the bunker, I chose to set up camp outside and continue my journey the following morning. While we're on this side of the island, I felt the need to stop by Calvin's lifeless body that I never took the GPS tracker off of. In a morbid way, his corpse has always served as the general location of my original base camp. I had high hopes for this place, and it was kind of a bummer to not really get a chance to build this place out some more, but maybe I'll come back here in a future playthrough. It also didn't help that this was right next to a cannibal camp and ended up being one of my first camps overrun by mutants, but defenses could have been made to prevent that. Oh well. Moving on to the next POI, I set off for the bunker near the downed plane. This was a pretty good hike, but I managed to come up on the cannibal camp in early afternoon. Although it was much less of a cannibal camp and more of a massacre, as it was in the process of being attacked by mutants. Of course, by attacked, I mean the mutants were completely dog-walked the cannibals, forcing me into cleanup duty. I made it to the plane shortly after and set up shop here for the night after collecting all the cash off the ground. Fun fact, at the time of recording this, you can cook rotten meat and it'll switch right back to cooked meat. If you're wondering just how big the island is, it took me most of day 82 to make it to the Sahara facility, leaving the plane at around 7:20 and arriving at around 3:30 in the afternoon. All of this just to trigger the cutscene one last time. After watching Eric and Tim in action one final time, I set off to reloot all of the rooms before ending the day. Day 83 saw us visiting the docks again and looting all of the crates. After taking some time to watch the waves, I headed up to the bunker for a final walkthrough of the finale. My admins were able to replay the final cutscene after completing the game, and even though I wasn't able to back on day 31, I wanted to give it another shot, just in case I missed something. Turns out I did. Pajamas, found in the lounge after the art gallery. Looks like all the demons respawned here, forcing me to have to yeet bombs in the tunnels to clear them out. If you're fast enough, you can just completely bypass them, but it's worth it just to drop a C4 bomb in the tunnel and watch 20 demons just evaporate. Making it to the end, it looks like we are able to replay the cutscene, which is pretty cool, so if you want to watch it again, well, here you go. The next morning of day 84 was spent battling cannibals on the golf course. Now that we've gentrified the area, we can experience the true gameplay of Sons of the Forest. At this point, I think I've wrapped up my little vacation and I'm ready to get back to work on my village. Some of the trees have started to regrow, but it looks like they do so at a much slower rate compared to the forest, so this is going to be another grind. I have a defensive wall to build around the perimeter, as well as a storage area that will need to be custom built. Over the next several days, I focused on building out a log wall perimeter connecting at each of the guard towers, as well as laying the foundation for the main storage room. I'd love to work on a larger scale village with the help of some friends or other content creators and Kelvin, so if you have someone you love to watch and want me to work with them, let them know and we'll see if we can get something together, because I think having a large scale building project on Sons of the Forest would be awesome to do. I wrapped up as much of the town as I could on the evening of day 98 before heading off to sleep. Originally, I had planned to give a tour on day 100, but I have other plans for tomorrow. So instead, I wanted to spend today giving a village walkthrough. I'm completely surrounded the exterior with spiked logs. The only way in is to zipline in via lines connected to the guard towers, which are also the only way to leave the village. I tried to keep the cabins isolated to one section and the stores to its own plot of land, with torches lining the rock walkways for better visibility. Unfortunately, there just wasn't enough time to finish the storage room. My plan was to have one open room with a ton of shelves in rows with each column hiding a specific item, similar to a back room of a retail store. I also had other plans for an armory, but clearly didn't have time to even lay the foundation. My only real wish for future extensions are to add the arrow holder from the forest so I can place them along with crafted bows at the top of all the guard towers to use. Like I've said countless times, this probably would have been completed weeks ago had I had Kelvin to help me, since he could have worked on one of the houses while I built out the storage room, but that's just something we'll have to be conscious of for next playthrough. Day 100. A 60+ hour journey, but one that I've had a blast with. After learning I could re-trigger the cutscene a few weeks back, I figured there'd only be one true way to end this playthrough. I want to give a massive thank you to all of my YouTube members who have helped me make it possible for me to do this full time. This video quite simply would not be possible without your support, and I cannot thank you enough for that. I appreciate you all, and as always, thanks for stopping by.